All right, we'll go ahead and call the Policy Subcommittee meeting December 16th to order. We'll start with invocation. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for all the blessings you've given us, and thank you for the rain you're providing, but please be with those that are facing issues from the flooding, and please be with our emergency service folks who are potentially working cases involved that. Please be with us tonight as we conduct business. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, first item on the agenda is election of chairman. Is there a motion?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Becker, Chair.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other nominations? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So that's unanimous. Election of vice chairman.
Let's nominate Catherine.
Catherine Strong. Okay. There's a motion, Catherine Strong.
Second.
Second. Any other nominations? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Catherine Strong is the vice chairman. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
We got a motion. You want a second? Do we need to add anything to the agenda or?
That's
I don't,
Okay.
not anything that I'm aware of.
So we got a motion, and I'll go ahead and second it. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, recognition of public. Anyone? Mr. Nipper, you'd like to speak on any topic?
No, sir, Mr.
All
Chairman,
right.
thank you.
If we have any questions as we go through, just let me know. Approval of the minutes, February 6th, 2019.
That's a long row.
Yeah. We got a motion on that one.
I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve. Miss Judy, you want to
I'll second.
second that?
Mhm.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Report of the committee chair. I have no report except for the items on hand here. So we'll move on to discussion items. Item A, amended implementation plan of the 2012 Finance Act. Mr. Long, you want to speak to that?
Several years back, when the county initially adopted the 2012 Financial Management Act, they adopted an implementation plan. At this point, with the amendments, it would be pertinent to go ahead and revisit that. I have a recommended amendment plan in your packet. If we go to page 73,
Mm-hmm.
other than to belabor it and go through the whole thing, I'll just first go through the headings, and then I'll go to where we're at on certain items and explain what the actual format is. If you look from the column to the top, the first is the goal. The goal, I try to keep them as close to the 2012 Act or what we're trying to accomplish as possible. The second column from the left, I put in the sections covered. The third one is the actions I believe that would be necessary to cover that. And then the last one is the duration. If we're not currently engaged in that particular action because of lack of resources, we need to finish one action before the next. I put time to be determined. So if you look at the first one, that's the pretty close to the verbiage from the 2012 Act. It tells the sections it'll cover and what actions, and we are in progress. We've at least started most of the actions. If we go, for instance, to page number 2, and I can kind of go over the next steps that we really need to accomplish. About 2/3 of the way down, the third one up, we have, if you look, it says implementation completed, and then it's got policy update in progress with completion date to be determined. That is referring to the purchasing and the accounts payable policy. It's not been updated for several years. It needs to be updated for the 2012 Act, the ERP system, and the way we're anticipating running it over the short term and the long term. If we go on down through there, there's several items to be noted. For instance, if we go on back, on the bottom of page 3, if you go up, it says in progress, estimated completion date, March 30th, 2020. That is to bring over the purchasing back over from the schools to start the bidding, everything except for the highway department. We need to look at that at some much later point in the future because we need to address a few things. Miss Judy uses a purchase order system that runs her work order system, and they have some different hours in our finance department, so there's a lot more groundwork that needs to be done. So that's kind of what I'm recommending. We go ahead and deal with that step first and then start exploring the other one in the next 2 to 3 years, start looking at what we can do and what won't work with Miss Judy instead of rushing it. That's kind of where we got before. We were trying to rush everything forward and it made it very difficult. The next thing that we're actually engaged in is the Kronos implementation. At this point, the finance department is on the Kronos system, and we're testing it, finding little problems here and there. We're working with Kronos. The IT department's on there too, but they're not using it as their system of record. The health department is actually on the Kronos system at this point too, but it's not their system of record. That's why we have the February 1st and the June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
The next one we're hoping to engage in the next couple of months is EMS, and we've already started on the sheriff's department, but because of some rule issues we were having with Kronos and they needed to make some significant changes to their network that they're in the process of doing right now, we've kind of pushed that one off to early 2021. So based on the resources we have available, we think we could slowly knock out this Kronos project over the next 2 to 3 years. And hopefully by June 30, 2020, we're going to have, if all goes well, one major department, 3 small departments, and then we're hoping early in 2021 actually pull on our largest department, which will be Sheriff's Department. And we'd like to re-gauge ECC, and then phase 7 go and work with all the other departments based on a workable time frame.
On this plan, this implementation plan, is this something that who put this together originally?
I put the original together. This is a brand new one, and it's really the committee that does it. So this is just, as far as the full-time staff bringing forward what they would recommend. The committee here has every right to work and amend on this as they see fit.
Mm-hmm. So what we're seeing here that's printed right now is the plan that's already in place, or they're your recommended changes?
That's the direction we're going right now.
Okay.
Unless we make significant changes in the ERP or the amount of resources available.
Gotcha.
If we want to put additional resources, we can speed it up, but racing to the finish line has several problems. The next one's the Munis receipting software. We're anticipating by March 1, 2020 to have it completely up and running. If we go on down, I'm sorry, let's go to page 5 of 5.
Okay.
One thing I do want to mention, we've been mentioning just the Munis system, but we've got to be able to pre-audit the Munis. So one thing this committee will need to work together on is actually coming up with internal controls and rules for the timekeeping system. For instance, if you log in Kronos, it's going to have a timestamp, but occasionally your employees may be in classes or they may forget to clock in. One of the internal controls we probably want to have, if you do that, you need to put a comment there describing why there's a difference. Because if not, then it's going to make it impossible for me, my office, or for audit to actually audit these timekeeping records or for wage and hour. Just simple little things like that. For instance, that you do want an employee signing off on their timesheet and that you want the department head or the elected official signing off. So we do need to create some basic rules for the ERP, for the timekeeping that hasn't really went very far either before we go live. And then if we go on down, it says Munis receipting software. That's the one I was speaking of earlier. I kind of got a little ahead of myself. We're actually estimating having that part done by March 1, 2020. And one thing that Munis also has is what's called cashiering for instance, construction and development, planning, EMS, archives, the ones that have these manual receipts, we can actually give them an electronic receipting system for free that will actually interface with the Munis system. These are my recommendations, and it's really the purview of the committee as a group to adjust or to adopt or to move forward, but we do need to put one in place per the act.
Is the last one we just talked about, the cashiering software, is that 2021 date correct?
Yes, sir. That's when we're going to get them all done, because what you've got to do is right now we're going to have the receipts, which will be up in our office, but we've got several offices we're going to extend this out to. So as soon as we finish this, we're going to have the employees that are engaged on receipting to start with archives. We've got to set up the software, actually train them, look at the internal controls, and then we're going to move over to, for instance, probably construction and development planning.
Mm-hmm.
When you look across the county, these are remote sites, and there's going to be several of them. There's going to be EMS, which is rather large. Audit had significant issues for several years with the receipts in the library, so the libraries will fix their issue too. But this is one that we've been working on with Munis. The way we foresee it working is you'll go, and if you come to that office, they'll do your cashiering receipt, you'll get your cash, it'll set cash on hand at the library, for instance. It'll have all the revenue already in for year end and everything else. When you go to finance, we'll write a receipt, it'll move it over to cash with trustee, and then the receipt and cash will be brought down to your trustee's office. So it's a whole other workflow than what we've got going on right now. Right now, they're using a lot of manual receipts or receipting systems that audit has issues with that they give us internal findings every year.
Okay.
So it's a rather large, long, drawn-out process.
Ms. Judy, you got some questions?
Yes, of all of these, which ones are the pushing issues? I know from audit, which ones, I guess we need to do the hottest topics first and take care of those and address those first, and then move on into these others and get a game plan, I guess, if you will.
Yes, ma'am.
But take care of what audit is really down your neck about.
There's a couple of them we've got, and we fixed most of those. The first one was the new act, and that's what the state was recommending to do.
Right.
Checks versus warrants. In other words, our actual checks in the trustee's office. We've got that already handled.
Okay.
We've already set up the chart of accounts. The next thing that we really probably need to deal with, which we're going to, is the munis receipting.
Okay.
They've been giving us internal findings for the cashiering, so we're going to try to knock those out each one after the other.
Okay.
The next thing that we probably need to knock out is the munis system, because the chrono system, because one of the biggest risks that you have as a service provider is wage and hour non-compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So with the chronos and the consultants, the act calls for a wage and hour completely automated system that helps protect the county from accidental wage and hour non-compliance. So that would probably be your second one that you want to tackle. And then the other one that we're tackling right now is the third one, which is actually bringing the bidding back over to the county.
Okay.
But with that being said, the new act does not set us a definite amount of time for implementation.
Right.
And they've given us one for purchasing, but it'll be more like a best practices.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do what I'm talking about, when we do the purchasing, I think we should bring over the county, because when we were looking at yours earlier, Ms. Judy, we ran into a couple of things, since we need to explore in the long run how to fix work order issues, timing issues, workflow. So we're not nowhere near the point of bringing highway over. We're looking more like the other offices.
Mm-hmm. Okay, example, okay, the receipting, then when you get into Chronos, and you've got such a large department with the sheriff's office, and you're talking about when they have okay, let's say a miss punch. That's gonna be such a redundant, time consuming for somebody. So it's going to be real important to get that and have some input from those folks, because you don't want to bog somebody down for 2 days signing off on missed punches or going in there cumulatively adding up to 2 days saying, well, he missed the clock because he was in class, he did this and this one did this, because that just gets
they're using a system very similar to Munis, which it doesn't quite fulfill what they need. So we're anticipating, and we've been working with the Sheriff's Department. We stopped at this point because they had to make some network changes because it wasn't working well with the software. We're anticipating that this is going to use the same amount of time or less when we started working with the Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
And we have been working with those, and I think Cronus is supposed to be engaging EMS directly to see what's the best way to work with it right now.
Okay.
So they are actually involved with the Chronos team and our team to try to figure out the best way to make the system work.
So do we want, I mean, I guess my question is the main thing to get a plan and get a time frame set up, or as we go along, do we want to address these issues as we go, or do we need to get a draft first of what needs to be going on?
Right here's the draft of the actions, and the ones that we can determine the time pretty readily, we've put them in. We could probably accelerate those, but it's going to take more time. For instance, we've got the receipting, I believe it's in March of 2020, we're going to have it up and operational. We're going to have several of the Chronos departments up and operational this fiscal year and early next year. That's what we're saying. We think that the best approach is, for instance, the Chronos to do a department or two at a time because it allows more of our people to be engaged in Chronos. We've got money budgeted for the ERP system that's never been utilized, and we think it would be a better utilization of the funds for training and for a slow implementation versus, I guess, for a gunshot approach where we do a whole bunch of departments at one time. That's why we've got, if you look at this and kind of read through it, it really slow walks you to 2 or 3 areas at a time, and then we address those, we can address the next 2 or 3 areas.
Okay.
Because what we did at the beginning, we had initially set it up and we tried to hit them all at one time, but with that, there wasn't enough resources in the county to cover all the
Right,
parts.
right. Okay.
So who's like, what I'll say, the subject matter expert, like in my world, where I work, it'd be like the project manager, like, is overseeing this whole thing. Are
I've been
you
doing it for the
serving
last-
that?
And unfortunately, I've got a limited amount of time to put to it.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis has hired a ERP database administrator that's going to be helping.
Mhm.
But right now, they've got to learn the software, and then they've got to learn all the stuff that I've learned over the last several years to know.
So what do we need, what's the action tonight then?
You could, set another meeting to look at it if you want to take it back with you to look at it, or 2, approve it as is, because most of the dates are blank except for the ones that we feel pretty safe to determine at this point.
Do we, because we're missing 2 of our 5 members, I'd like to get their input. Is there something that, like, if we held off on approving this, is that gonna slow down anything?
No. We're still moving forward based on the original implementation plan, which it was pretty much a gunshot approach, so we're just doing everything that we can capture at this point that we consider most, kind of what Miss Judy's saying, what we think's most urgent at this point. Because if you look way down there, it says the fixed assets will be on the ERP system, but we don't think that's anywhere near as pressing as getting Chronos on because it protects us in wage and hour, or getting the cashiering in because audit's unhappy with it, and there's risk of possible theft of cash at some point, probably not material, but it's higher without the ERP system. So we're trying to get the most urgent areas first.
Something for me, and I don't know if you're, from a visual standpoint, putting together like a Gantt chart that's showing all this and how it's all laid out and so forth. It'd be nice. You got it all. I mean, it's all written down, but in a nice little chart format would be nice, just to, from a visual standpoint. Does that make sense?
You want a timeline?
Yeah.
So once the committee sets a date, okay, say it's a date to be determined, and we see that, or we think that the date is gonna be whatever, and that doesn't materialize, or it's fast approaching, and we see that it's not gonna materialize, or your department sees that it's not gonna
We amend
how
it.
crucial, okay, it's not gonna be,
No. Right now, because we're trying to do it in the most cost-efficient manner,
right?
Munis is significantly under budget, so we have hours there to deal with issues in it. Chronos, we have one that's based on meeting milestones, which there's 4 implementation milestones. After we implement 4 with Chronos, we're anticipating that our staff internally will implement the next offices. So we've got a plan in where it allows us to do it in whatever's the most advantageous time for the county. We want to get it done, but we don't want to get it done where it's causing operational problems. We could do it really fast, but it's probably going to cause cost and operational problems, and a lot of people are confused because they're not trained well, and people may not be informed well, and it causes a lot of unhappy customers or unhappy departments is what we're afraid of.
I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to approve this amended implementation plan that we've just reviewed.
Mr. Becker,
Mhm.
this actually will go to, it's recommended to the Financial Management Committee from you guys. It will go to
Okay.
them, and then they can amend it too if they so force.
So the action for this policy subcommittee is to approve it to move to the financial
Yes, sir.
management? Okay, so I make a motion to approve this amended implementation plan and move it to the financial management committee.
Right, because it says to recommendation, and then it says the Financial Management Committee will evaluate all areas in the act, and it just reads into that they'll actually be one monitoring it.
Okay. So is there a second to that?
Just for discussion, I'm gonna second that for discussion.
Okay.
Okay, so once we approve that, then, again, I'm probably just rehashing this, but these dates that are not filled in or yet to be determined, how do we go back and recapture or revisit what date that's gonna be and relate that back to the Financial Management Committee?
It's fluid, so you'd recall this committee, and we'll come in and come with the termination date, and you guys will recommend it to financial management to move on.
Okay.
And then at the end, when
Okay.
you get a section implemented, the financial management committee will determine it's implemented, and then we'll notify everybody.
Okay, I just
So-
didn't
so
wanna
I-
lock
Should be
in.
fluid.
No, yeah, I think probably what makes sense is probably this subcommittee meeting once a quarter or something like that. And this, as Mr. Long said, to amend this to move it back to financial management. Either for any dates that have been missed or any new dates that, instead of saying to be determined, we're now comfortable further enough along to make a decision or identify a target date at least.
Want to be as fluid as possible. For instance, one spot in here in the plan, it mentions that we may want to explore the Munis enterprise version of the document management.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, right now, Munis, if you're doing accounts payable, receiving, something that you can attach to, we can use the document management system. If we determine the county needs a document management system-wide, then you can get a larger service and upgrade that to actually be just a document management system. So that's something that even mentions in here to explore later, because that's a possibility. So that you want to stay as fluid as possible, because say, for instance, we go down the road, we get this implemented, then 3 years from now, you decide, hey, there's a better software package that you'd rather have that we can implement at a reasonable cost. You may even decide to go a different direction.
Okay, well, since we have two members that are absent, I just didn't wanna, move forward and it not, and not address something that needed to be addressed before we send it on to financial management.
But it's a very fluid act.
Okay.
I try to write it as fluid as possible, the way we wouldn't be
Okay,
locked in with a pushing deadline that's gonna make us do something we really shouldn't.
okay.
Any other questions? Okay, so all in favor of moving this to the Financial Management Committee? Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, what's item B here? Is that,
Item B is just the original act, and item C, and it's more for information. If the committee members didn't have a copy, we'd like to have a new copy.
we don't have to vote on that?
No, sir, and it also allows, if you want to go down the implementation plan and compare it to what was referenced versus what was written in the verbiage in the actual implementation plan.
What about item C?
It's the amendment to the act. And B is the original and C is the amendment.
Okay. So nothing to vote on either one of those?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.